indie game garden.
Fer is the solo developer behind the chaotic and flow-state-inducing delivery roguelike Tossdown. The way I've heard Fer describe this game is the stylistic flair of Jet Set Radio meets the action arcade gameplay of Crazy Taxi. And if that's not fuel for the soul, then I don't know what is, folks. I'm super excited to sit down with Fer to discuss his experience as a Nigerian game developer and how he came up with the idea for the beautiful mix of stylish, sporadic elegance that is Tossdown. Let's get to it. Well, Fer, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you on the show. To start, I would love to hear more about your history with games. Talk me through the interactive experiences that first inspired you and what made you decide to start making games yourself.
Okay. Hi, my name is Fer. I am a solo indie dev from Nigeria. Lagos, Nigeria to be precise. And I have been making video games for the past 10 plus years. It all started with me kind of learning about game engines. So I never really knew you could make video games. I had dabbled in programming and modding of games, but I never thought I could make video games on my own. And then I kind of heard from someone that you could use a game engine. So that was like my first step into it. And then I tried a bunch of tutorials and I found out that it was actually possible. So from then on, I started making a lot of small video games like game jams, partaking in as many game jams as possible until I started making my own games that were with my own identity. So that's how I kind of came up with making games and just seen myself do it for the past 10 years. And it's been super fun all the way.
Tossdown is your current commercial project, and I can't wait to dive into your development process on the game. What are some of the non-commercial games you've made in the lead up to Tossdown? So some of those game jam games you talked about. Have you always worked in Unity, or have you switched around with engines? And what are some of the advantages of working in Unity, in your opinion?
Oh, okay. So before Touchdown, yes, I have worked on a couple of games. I worked on a game called Gun Dots, right, which is a game where you play as a couple of dots that shoots guns, right. So it's still on my HIO page at this point. It's one of the first games I really enjoyed making. And before that, I worked on a game called Unarmed. It was like one of my first long-term projects. I think I spent about 3 years on the project before realizing that it was kind of too big for me to finish, and then I had to kind of can it. Moved on to working on smaller projects. So I think those are the two main games I kind of really enjoyed making. And leading up to that, I kind of always did tutorial projects, right? Here or there, game jams here and there. But I've used Unity all my life, right? Unity is what I've used, but I've also tried Unreal, I tried Godot, but Unity is kind of that sweet spot where it's not too technical and it's not lacking the features I need. So I decided to keep on using Unity. And I think I'll be using Unity like for the meantime until maybe something crazy happens again.
Yeah, for sure. Unity is definitely a sweet spot as far as features go. And so I hope that it continues to be a platform that small creators can make use of. Um, Tell me more about the origins of your game design philosophy. I heard in another interview that you did that you were inspired by Tyler Glale of Mugenics to crank up one element of your game like 1,000 times, and how that experience led pretty directly to the amount of kind of chaotic action that's on display in the current build of Tossdown that you're working on. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about your game design philosophy, maybe from that angle, maybe from any other that you want to explore.
All right. So one thing I do love working on are the kind of games that respect people's time, right? I love games that kind of go straight to the point, teach you what you need to do. I'm someone that I love to try out a lot of games, so I don't like when a game takes too much of my time, and that kind of um, influenced my game design philosophy, which is make games that are simple to learn, hard to master, and they don't waste people's time. So when I was working on Touchdown, it kind of lacked um, that main thing that was going to be super attractive, right? So I was still working on it, showing it off on Twitter. People liked it, right? People liked it because it was chaotic, but somehow I was holding back on the chaos until I saw the tweet and I decided to crank things up and realized that the game is actually much more fun when the chaos is like crazy and then players can navigate through the chaos, right? Feeling that you could survive the chaos helps a lot, right? So that's how I was able to realize that I should be cranking things up in the game. And it was not going to ever become too hard. It was just going to become something I want it to be simple. And once the players master it, they can actually weave through the chaos, right? So chaos became something I had to embrace in Tossdown. And the tweets was something that helped me to really, really see that. So that's how the tweets like I came across the tweet and it matched my philosophy and I was able to bring both of them together and that's how I've just been building Tossdown since then.
Yeah, well, it looks like an absolute blast, and I'm blown away by the design chops that are on display in Toss Down, particularly in your planning to execution phase of the idea, and you can see a lot of the player feedback and inspiration come through in that process. One of the most refreshing facets of the indie game scene, in my mind, is how indie devs are a lot less incentivized to rely on like the typical formula of AAA violence and gore. And I think Toss Down exemplifies this by having the key action in the game be delivering as many packages as you can while doing parkour around all these dangerous obstacles. You don't even have to make the deliveries, but if you don't, you won't be able to gather enough resources to put together a strong enough build to brave kind of the increasing difficulty levels. This is beautiful game design. How did you first come up with the idea, and how has it evolved over your years of developing the game?
That's a very good one. So Touchdown is it's kind of an idea I had since 2019, right? I wanted to make a game where things fell out of the sky and you just have to run. I think I prototyped that during the GNTK Game Jam 2019, but it was like something I couldn't really figure out, right? So years later, I decided to work on something new, right? Where I wanted a game with free flowing movement where the player runs around the map with not so many restrictions. You could jump on buildings, jump on cars, and all that. And when that was done, I liked the control, but then I had an idea of bringing back my old idea of things falling from the sky because you need a reason to be running around the map.
Yeah.
And when I brought two of them together, it was just like really good because now you had a purpose to run, right? Which is you don't want to get hit by the obstacles. And finally, the final piece was the objectives, right? I I was playing Crazy Taxi around that period of time. I was playing Crazy Taxi, and I think Paperboy, right? So I loved how deliveries were the driving force for the chaos, right? In Crazy Taxi, you have to pick up people, go through a lot of crazy situations just to drop them off. So I decided to do the same thing for Touchdown, where you pick up packages, go through the chaos, and then deliver. So these were the various things I kind of put together, right? Just from trying out different things. I found out these were the things that like kind of just worked. And I decided to go with that. And it turned out to be fun when I was showing it off on Twitter. Primarily, Twitter was like where I was showing it off, and people really liked the concept, and that helped validate the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a it's elegant because of the simplicity of it and how it lends itself to that kind of roguelike formula of repeating runs and trying to make a better build. But it's all building on this one core idea of making deliveries, which I think is so beautiful. Another toss down influence, in addition to Crazy Taxi, that you've mentioned, is Paperboy, a classic NES arcade game where the player is tasked with delivering papers to specific houses within a time limit. Have you always been a fan of the arcade game genre? And how does this reflect your original interest in gaming as a hobby?
Oh yeah, I've always been a fan of the arcade genre. I mean, I think I've spent more time on arcade games than any type of games because I've always just loved games where I could just pick it up, have
Yeah.
fun, and let go. And whenever I'm coming back to it, it's not like I have to remember like a crazy amount of button combinations or like where I was in the story beats. I mean, yeah, story is important, but I kind of always loved games that were fun driven, right? Where everything follows the fun, right? So I played a lot of them. I still play a lot of them till now. So they kind of really influenced us down to a certain degree where I keep putting the fun first. Fun comes over everything else, and that's what that's what made arcade games really sticky, right? The fact that no matter like who is playing it, whether young or old, right, experienced or not experienced, there's a way for you to have fun with arcade games. So yeah, they did have like a lot of influence.
Yeah, that was beautifully said, and I think gets to the core of the magic that games can bring. Is that you could sit anyone down in front of a simple control interface, have them pick it up, and be smiling within moments. And I think that's exactly what Toss Down is doing, which is why it's such an honor to interview you. And it's official that the publisher Acclaim is publishing Toss Down. They're known to have practically, invented arcade action. And in your opinion, how does Toss Down represent an evolution of the arcade genre while still staying true to its roots in games like Paperboy and Crazy Taxi, these ones we've mentioned?
That's a very good question because one of the things I looked at when I was working on Touchdown was how can I bring improvements, because yes, there's a proven formula of how arcade games are, but then you still need that like 10% change, 10% improvement, right? And that was where the concept of Touchdown being a roguelite was, that's where it came from, because I was trying to look for a way to incentivize players to keep playing, right? To make them feel like death is not the end of the run, right? And arcade games of old, once you lose, you have to start again and not really get any progression. The progression is your skill, right? But in Thursday, I want the progression to be your skill and also what you unlock, right? You have things you're going to unlock in the game that makes delivery easier, right? And then you can use that to your advantage to um, play the game better, play the game faster, or whatever you want. So, my improvements to games like Crazy Taxi and Paperboy was replayability, right? They are
Mhm.
replayable on their own, but I kind of want to see the progression while you're replaying. So you feel like you're going somewhere, right? And not just playing the same loop over and over again. So you improve and you see the progression, and it just doesn't feel stale after some time. So that was like the goal I had in mind, right? To kind of prevent a situation where you become too good at the game and then nothing really changes and then you give up on the game.
Yeah, and that is kind of combining the magic of arcade games with the magic of all these indie roguelike games we're seeing crop up these days, where it is adding in that modularity that allows for replayability while, sticking to and celebrating kind of those vintage core loops of some of our favorite arcade games. And I think that's going to make Toss Down super successful. Do you envision an audience when you're designing games for, or do you make them mainly for yourself, kind of to fulfill a creative drive within you, or is it somewhere in between?
Oh yeah, definitely in between because, um, like I said, I kind of always want my game to be played by people without having to like do so much heavy lifting, right? So it's going to still have the depth, right? But it should be something anyone can get into. At the same time, I make the games for myself because one of the primary drivers for Touchdown was that I kind of was looking for something I could play in my spare time, right? So I was working on the game. I was like, I need something that when I am playing it, I will be excited to come back and play, right? I have a 30-minute break. I should be able to play Touchdown, right? So that's kind of what pushed me to play Touchdown. At the same time, when I was thinking about the type of people that should play the game, I did not want to box it into a certain just, oh, only the best video game players can play this kind of game. I wanted it to be anyone can play it, and anyone who is really skilled can do more with the game, right? That's how I see it, right? whatever skill level you have, you can definitely enjoy Tossdown. And for myself, it's something that I want to be able to play anytime and be proud of what I'm playing. So that's how it works for me.
What a great kind of statement of purpose to be able to, at the end of a long and hard development process, have your game be something that you're still interested and loving and enjoying, even in your free time. And I feel like Toss Down is a wonderful embodiment of that because it is so joyful and it is so delightful. But it does have so much depth to the builds that even someone like you who's looked at it, day after day after day for years, can still find new joy in it. And I think that's great. Um, what has your experience been as a Nigerian game developer? And what are some facets of your experience that most of our listeners might not expect or know about?
Oh, that's quite an interesting question because there's like a lot of factors that comes with making video games in Nigeria, right? In Nigeria, we kind of don't really have support for video game development because it's relatively new. So, like in Nigeria, you kind of have to build things yourself. The community is small, so you share resources, and we have funding isn't really like out there. So once you're building a game as a solo developer in Nigeria, you have to be very strategic about what you're building, right? It's very interesting to build the next maybe AAA game or triple I, but when you know the time funding isn't really there or the talent, right? You kind of have to be smart, literally. You cut down your scope, right? Make sure it's something you can finish. I knew Touchdown was a game I could handle. That's why I decided to work on it full time. And you have to make sure you don't blow your budget, right? Whatever way, you must make sure you don't blow your budget. So these constraints kind of dictate the kind of games we can make here, right? We all would love to make one of the best indie games possible, but you just have to make sure it's something that's sustainable. And so far, we have a lot of people doing it here, but it's not just like worked out so well. But it's been this is like the best time ever in like the Nigerian game dev space, right? We have people who are learning how to actually make small scoped fun games, and I think in the next few years, hopefully, that's going to improve.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear it. And kind of just a follow up question to that. Do you see this era of productivity and creativity in the Nigerian game scene? Is that kind of supplemented by access to things like social media, Blue Sky, previously Twitter, where you're able to, like you've done with Toss Down, put some screenshots, put some videos out there of the gameplay early on and kind of get feedback and encouragement from around the world? Do you think that that is helping game developers in your community continue and maybe finish some of these projects that otherwise there might not be motivation or inspiration for?
Oh yes, definitely. I think the world has kind of become much more connected, and that has really helped because now you can make a game from here, and someone from way maybe like 8,000 kilometers or something can tell you, "Oh, you should do this to improve your game," right? Whereas before you were kind of constrained by where you were, and access to social media. I know a lot of Nigerian devs right now who their games are also getting recognition. They are kind of like in events. They are posting on Blue Sky. They're posting on Twitter. Every like platform possible, and then they're also getting like the waves that I got in the early times of Touchdown, right? And that's super encouraging to see. It shows that they are doing something, and these tools are amplifying that reach, right? So if you're making a good game and you have the social media tools to push it to more people, it kind of gives you that motivation that you're building something people would actually like, right? Rather than building it silo and finally releasing the game and find out that it was never really good enough, or you missed the mark. You kind of don't know what's happening. So tools have definitely helped, right, in so many ways. And I'm super grateful that we have this because now that the world is changing so fast, you kind of need to know where people are, where the people who are going to play your games are. So yeah, definitely helps.
Yeah, that's beautiful to hear. And it is inspiration to my listeners and myself to continue to kind of search far and wide for not only the types of games that we want to play, but also the types of creators we want to support, like you. If you could give some advice to an aspiring game designer, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, yeah, there are lots of advices out there that like people give advice every day. But from my own experience, what I would say is you have to build and ship games, right? I know it's very common, everyone says it, but you would never really know the problems that you could face. You'd never really know the joys you could get from building a game until you ship it and other people are playing it. Because video games are kind of like really social. Like you want to know what other people think about your game. And if it never gets completed, if it's only screenshots and videos online, people won't really be able to tell you what they really think about the game. So when you're starting off, no matter how bad you think your game is, you kind of just have to wrap it up and ship it for people to try. Right? You would be surprised to find out someone is going to play maybe like 20 hours of your game, even though you think it's bad. It happened to me with my early prototypes where I would share it with someone. I felt like they played the game for like 5 to 10 hours. That's something that just motivates you and also pushes you to build something better. And there's also the fact that the experience you gain from it is invaluable. You can't really learn that from an online course or from a YouTube video. So you just have to ship the games. That's my advice to aspiring game designers.
That's beautiful advice. I think it's interesting because while it is very simple, it's something that I don't think I've heard verbatim, word for word on this podcast yet. You hear a lot of like make small games, keep the scope realistic, etc. But the idea that games are social, I think, is such an important one. Um, in addition, I think the idea of needing to ship your game in order to kind of gain inspiration to keep making them is really important, because I think in today's day and age where it seems like it's easier than ever to make a game with all the tools out there, and tutorials and what have you, it's so easy to kind of get lost in the sauce, if you will, and like leave things half
Yeah.
finished or leave things in kind of the idea phase. And treating games like they're social, like they're these tools of connection, I think is such a powerful idea, particularly if you want to keep making them, because you can develop this community of players and creators without even knowing it. So I think that's really important advice. Um,
Yeah.
I would love to hear additionally if you could reach all the people who simply identify as game players but maybe have no interest in making games. What do you wish they could know about the developers whose art they consume so regularly?
Hmm. That's a very good question. So, if I could reach people who don't make games, one thing I would love to let them know is video games are borderline magic, right? It's very hard to pull off a really good game. There are so many moving parts, and for context, I have a background in software engineering. I studied computer science, I did software engineering. I kind of know the difference between making a game and making products. Video games are kind of beyond products. We have music, we have art, we have programming, right? We have sound design. It's super, super, super hard to bring all this together to make your favorite games. I mean, you could play your favorite game and you could just enjoy it, but it's a lot of duct tape and wizardry just to get that to work. So I would love people to try to know more about what goes into making games because it's so beautiful to see from the outside. Because when you're inside, it's way harder to appreciate the beauty of video games. So if you don't make video games, try to learn about the process. It's so fun.
I think that's great advice, and I think it's something that doesn't get said enough in an era that is so focused on, profit margins and is something good, is something bad, being quick to judge.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
is beautiful how I think indie games are usually so much more than the sum of their parts, where people are
Yep.
playing them and feeling emotions that maybe the developer hadn't even intended, but they mean so much to so many people. And so I think getting as many perspectives as possible is so important, even if you are just a player. So, very well said. For as we come to the end of our interview here, do you have anything you can share about the timeline on Tossdown? When you might expect there being more a playable demo or a playable build that folks can engage with?
Okay, so for Tossdown, right now it's being tested internally, right, with my publishers. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
make sure Tossdown is much better than what it is right now. It's good, but there's so much I can do to make it better. So there are no hard timelines for Tossdown, but I'm definitely looking to put something out there. There's definitely going to be a demo, and hopefully from there, people are going to really enjoy the game before the full thing comes out. So, um, no hard timelines, but definitely soon, I'll
sweet.
be saying things that everyone needs to hear.
Yeah, well, we're really excited for it. I can't wait to kind of get hands on it myself. And yeah, I mean, that's all the questions I had. For thank you so much for your time today. It meant a lot to talk to you, and you're just such a bright human being. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Johnny. I really appreciate the time.
And that was Fer. Such a generous soul. So many wonderful ideas about game dev, coming from a perspective that is so necessary these days, where I think even still we think about indie game dev, we think about kind of a middle-aged white guy clacking away at his computer in the Western world, which is oftentimes true, but there are a lot of perspectives making games that are not only worth your time, but should probably be number one on your list. And Tossdown is certainly one of those. Just having a look at the gameplay footage, I think you will see just how compelling a game it will be once it is released. And in the meantime, I will include Fer's itch.io page in the show notes if you want to see some kind of more prototype style builds that he's done in the lead up to releasing Tossdown, which is going to be an event in itself. You should definitely go wishlist the game on Steam. We've talked about how important wish lists are for devs trying to make it and trying to get their game out there. So go ahead and do that. As far as my spiel for the day, I've been thinking a lot about kind of representation in art and how the package that we interact with a story, or I guess any kind of art, the package is so important. So you could have the same theme. A theme I've been thinking about a lot recently is detective fiction set in small fishing villages. Basically, the impetus for this thought is I've been playing some Legend of the River King, the old Game Boy Color game, which is such a revelation. I've never played it before. It's awesome. If you have an emulator or the original hardware, I would definitely recommend checking out Legend of the River King. It's kind of like it's just a fishing game, and it's an RPG version of that, and it hit the U.S. just months before Pokemon did, And I think it's just kind of like such an interesting alternate reality version of what Pokemon can be. And certainly as an adult, I feel like it scratches more itches for me, just as far as like the elegance of game design and the simplicity and how patience is a mechanic. Legend of the River King is dope, but I was thinking about while playing it, kind of crossing it up with my love of detective fiction as well, and creating a game where it's like every third or fourth fish is like a body part or something, or a clue that you can then take to town and ask people about, and have that be kind of the simple loop. But I was thinking about how this theme has definitely been explored, in novels, in short stories. It's probably been explored in visual art, painting, charcoal sketching. It's probably been explored in, tabletop RPGs, actual play podcasts, video games, movies, TV, all these different media that we kind of take for granted. And I think it's fascinating to me that as someone who has kind of like songs, music, it's another thing I hadn't mentioned. Someone like me who has dabbled in some of these different artistic mediums, thinking about if a theme hits as hard, across them, or if, a certain theme or story is more suited to one medium over another. Certainly on this show in the past, we've talked about video games that are special because they could only be video games. A good example of that, I think, is something like Katamari Damacy. And on my bedside table right now, I have the boss fight books, Katamari Damacy by Ellie Hall, which is a wonderful read if you want a book recommendation. But anyway, all that's to say, just something to think about as you're enjoying your favorite games is, could this be something else? Could this be a book? Could this be a movie? What have you? And would I enjoy it more? Would I enjoy it as much? Would I enjoy it less? And kind of parsing through the reasons why and letting that guide your critical reflection on a piece of media, at least for me, is something that has brought me a lot of joy and introspection over the last few days, and has kind of come on the heels of me trying to make my own little game in Twine and what have you, and potentially re-engage with some fiction projects and some writing. It's been interesting. I also have been having a look at RPG Maker and seeing if I could maybe make another little game in that, and just considering the consequences of, like spending time on getting to learn a game engine well enough to ship something in it versus, just spending time making prose better in a long form fiction piece, or what have you, and the accessibility of each, because I think there are some people who would find, playing a game on itch so much easier than, picking up a physical copy of a book, or, an e-copy and reading through it. Whereas on the other hand, I think a lot of people would say the book is easier, and I think that divide can be generational a lot of times, and divides like that really kind of trip me out, just because we're all human and we all enjoy art, and we all, I think, at our core want to love one another. I use all, like, I think 99% of us want to love one another and connect over these stories, which are innately human pieces of culture. And so I've just been thinking about how to bring all of that together and make them more accessible. Maybe there's not a way, but perhaps you have ideas. Perhaps you have encouragement for me on potentially writing or making this eerie detective fishing game. If you want to chime in, send me an email at indiegamegarden@gmail.com. Find me on Blue Sky at Darth Malks, on Instagram at indiegamegarden. I love interacting with community members, and yeah, just give me a comment. Let me know you're listening. It would mean the world. Also on YouTube at Indie Game Garden. Subscribe, like, all that funny stuff we hear all too much. But the best thing you can do for the show is tell a friend. It would mean the world to me to get at least one more listener each week, help grow the slight impact I can have on helping these wonderful creators' games get out there. And if I can do that, I will be a happy boy. And with that, I will talk to you next week. Thank you so much.